Today I'm going to share with you how to make this beautiful denim quilt. It's made up from a huge variety of old pairs of jeans, some tie-dye denim and some burnt orange linen left over from a garment I made. So as you can see, I've got 24 blocks, each measure 16 inches. This quilt's designed to go over our twin beds in our bedroom, which are pushed together. And I've edged it with the same orange just to complement and finish the quilt. So here's a variety of jeans I've got, just different denims, greys, blacks, blues, huge variety, just waiting to be reused for a new project. And here's my linen, which is my contrasting fabric in the blocks. Now, because it's a lighter weight than the denim, I've ironed fusible interfacing onto the back of it, just so it's a more of a similar weight to the denim. So this is my first block. I'm starting with some tie-dye denim in the middle, and I'm cutting some straight edges, cutting a square. A quiltless ruler, rotary cutter and cutting mat is really helpful for this quilt. So I'm just going to keep going and cut my edges nice and neat. Nice and parallel. Now I'm going to add some of my contrasting linen here. This is very much just play it by ear and see how you go when building your blocks. There's no right or wrong. So I'm choosing to add this orange here, and I'm going to stitch it with a seam allowance the width of my foot, so I think that's probably just under 1/4 inch. And I'm going to use a very small stitch length. I think about stitch length of about 2.2, because this will stop the stitches unravelling as you go. It's really important, like with lots of sewing, to press your seam allowances. This makes a really big difference on this quilt because of the level of bulk from all the different denims. So I'm going to, as I say, iron all seam allowances as I go, just to help reduce the bulk. So there's the middle of my block, and I'm now just going to play with composition and different fabrics, different denims, different colours around it until I'm happy with some kind of design. So just have fun. You can take inspiration from regular traditional sewing blocks if you like. You can do diagonals, you don't have to do squares or rectangles. Just have a play, see what denim you got, and just see how it folds out. Once you're happy with your design, you can then cut some straight edges and start building up from the centre and working your way outwards. So now I'm just playing with adding a little bit of orange if I want to, and then beginning to cut my pieces of denim to piece together as I go. Having straight lines and 90-degree angles cut just makes the sewing that much easier to make sure you've got parallel edges, etc. So as you can see, I've got my two 90-degree angles there, and it's the same width as the original piece. So I'm going to stitch with the same seam allowance and press the seam allowance open. Now I'm going to add a strip of denim, strip of linen, and I'm going to endeavour to sew those seam allowances open as they've been pressed, just to reduce the bulk. As I say, with denim it's quite a heavy fabric, isn't it? So it does make a heavier quilt. I always use a denim needle when sewing denim but a new one, it makes such a difference, and a quality thread. So I'm using regular thread for sewing the quilt together, but I'll use a quilting thread for when it comes to quilting it later. So that's pressed open. I'm going to add the next piece of denim, and as you can see, I'm just gradually building up this block as I go. I don't think any of the blocks I made are the same. Some are very similar to each other, but they're all unique. Some of the blocks I've kept some of the seams from the jeans. Mainly I haven't. You can of course use the pockets if you want. It's totally up to you as to what your sewing machine can cope with and what you want to include. So this sewing machine I'm using at the beginning of this quilt would not cope, for example, with waistbands, etc. So now I'm just checking the width of my block so far, because I need it to be 17 inches wide, 17 inches square. So I just need to check that that works. Obviously I need to add a little bit more, so I'm going to add that on the bottom there. You can make your blocks any size you like. It's just the size I chose to work with in terms of the finished quilt size I wanted. Yeah, so any size of quilt block you like. Put a link below to a blog post about making this quilt, and it does include measurements for standard quilt sizes for different beds. Both UK and American bed sizes are included. So here I am just making sure I get my 17-inch width and just being happy with the composition of the balance of the different tones of denim. So again, I'm going to give that a good press. Once I've finished my block, I am ironing on interfacing on the back, just so that my 17 inches don't wriggle and move with stretched denim, because some denims are really stretchy. Obviously, if you could just find non-stretched denim for this project, it would make your life a little bit easier, but most jeans nowadays have some stretch component to it. So these are some of my other finished quilt blocks, just showing you a variety of ideas here for your own sewing. So sometimes I've just got a splash of the contrasting fabric in there, just to add a little bit of detail and interest. There's a block that's inspired by traditional shapes. Some, as you can see, I've got denim that's been tie-dyed and some which haven't. So here's the back, the wadding and the front. I'm making a quilting sandwich so that I can quilt each block as I go. So I am using a quilting foot and quilting thread, and I am doing random quilting lines on the block. The important thing is I am stopping 1/4 of an inch before the edge of the wadding, so that is 3/4 of an inch away from the top of the quilt block. This is important for when we come to join the different blocks together. So as you can see, it's just random quilting lines. So the next step, once you've quilted all your blocks, is to join your blocks together. So you're going to lay them so the top right sides face each other. Your wadding aligns. I've got cotton batten in the middle of mine. So just checking that I've got them square on square. Now I'm going to pin down the stitch line, which is the edge of that internal wadding, and make sure it aligns. And then I'm pinning the back of the quilt fabric out of the way so I don't catch it by accident. This is really important. So I cut mine several times. So you're going to stitch down there. That should be half an inch seam allowance. Right, turn it over. So now we are going to trim the denim, press the seam allowance open, pin one of the back fabrics straight over the seam, and the other we're going to press under the raw edge and then place down and pin in place. So I'm going to stitch in the ditch down this original seam, catching the folded fabric in place on the reverse side. So here's my quilt at this stage. Next we're going to edge it. We're at the final stages. So I'm cutting 3-inch strips of my linen again, because I just think that just will finish the quilt off beautifully. And I'm going to join up these pieces so that I have the whole length of the quilt plus an additional 10 inches. So to join it, I'm just placing the fabrics right side together at right angles and stitching diagonally. Press those seam allowances open, and then we're going to press the whole length in half and turn under one end. I'm just finger pressing that. Now get your quilt, place that pressed folded under edge on the quilt, and then we're going to start a couple of inches down, and again the seam allowance is the width of the foot. So stitch until you get to the corner, stop 1/4 inch from the edge, cut off your thread. Now we're going to fold the fabric so we can get a nice diagonal here. You can see how I've done that. And then start again 1/4 inch in. Once you get back to the start point, tuck your finishing piece of edging inside the first piece, so you've got the fold rather than a raw edge, and just sew over and join up. Now once you've done all that all the way around, you are going to fold over your folded edge to the wrong side and either hand stitch to hold it in place or stitch in a ditch. And when you get to the corners, you are going to neatly fold in the fabric diagonally so you get a nice neat edge as you do here. You don't have to do this by hand at all, it's just that I preferred it. I'm not a precise sewer. If I was a regular quilter with precise sewing skills, I'd quite happily go for this with the machine, but I'm not, and I think this will give me a neat to finish as a result. So here it is, one finished quilt as you go denim quilt made with a variety of denim scraps and linen. I absolutely love this quilt. I'm so delighted I made it and I spent the time on it. I can't give you a time framework, it took me a long time. I think each block took me about 45 minutes to sew up in the first place. Then obviously you've got your cutting out to do, and then you're quilting each block, then joining each block, and then doing the edges. So yeah, a few days work, but I couldn't be happier with the result. If you like, do click like, subscribe for further denim upcycling sewing projects. Thanks for watching.